This program's brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau. Large or small, Virginia farmers work year-round to help put food on your table. And Farm Bureau works year-round to help farmers and all Virginians. Farming, it's all good. To learn more, go to vafarmbureau.org.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Virginia Farming. I'm Amy Rocher. Today, we're visiting Kentland Farms on the campus of Virginia Tech, and we're visiting the new Dairy Science Complex. That's all straight ahead on this special edition of Virginia Farming. So we're in the milking parlor of the Virginia Tech Dairy Science Complex, and I'm joined by Dr. Christina Wolf. And Christina, you are not only an extension specialist, but you are also an associate professor?
That's correct.
Well, thanks for meeting us out here today. This is an amazing complex.
We're really proud of it.
How long has this complex been open?
This complex has been open since August 3rd of this year, so it's just almost 2 months.
Okay. And how have you seen things progressing since you started?
At this facility, of course, when the cows were first moved here, there was some acclimation that was needed by the cows. But now everything is running really smoothly, and the employees are comfortable with how to handle the cows because it's a little different than our old facility. The cows are comfortable in the parlor now. The parlor design is a little different than the old one, so it had happened pretty quickly, but the cows did get acclimated, and so did the employees.
Wow. I want to talk a little bit about the herd.
Yep.
How many cows are on site, and how many are you milking?
A total of about 400 animals are on site, I believe. We're milking a little under 220 cows right now. The barn can hold up to 232 cows, so we can milk up to that amount.
Okay. So the parlor that's here behind us, you can milk 24 cows at a time, and you do twice a day milking?
That's correct. Yes, this is considered a double 12 parlor, so you can milk 12 animals on each side, 24 at a time, and we do milk twice a day.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about some of the computer systems I see in here. Can we move over here and have you explain that to us?
Sure.
Okay. So Christina, here we are in front of a computerized milk monitoring system. First of all, the red number up here on top, what does that signify?
When the cow first comes in the parlor, her ID number will pop up on that screen. Right now, what's being recorded is the milk weight, so how much milk she's giving at this particular milking.
Okay. And you said ID number.
Yes.
So how are they ID'd?
Each cow has their own individual ID number that they keep for the remainder of their life, and that number is never reused, so it's a way for us to track that animal. It's like giving a cow a name. The ankle bracelet that she's wearing is also coded for her cow ID, so when she comes in the parlor, this here actually picks up and reads the cow ID number that's associated with her ankle bracelet, and that's what tells this computer system which cow this is. She also has an ear tag in, but this is what the parlor is actually picking up.
Perfect. Okay. All right, so what else does this milk monitoring system monitor?
We have a couple of different components of technology that we have in the parlor here and on the cows. We were actually the first university in the U.S. to have both of these technologies, so we got them about 7 years ago. This is just a standard FE milk recording system that allows us to collect things like milk weight, the cow IDs. We can also code alarms if there's something wrong with an individual animal. We also have the ankle bracelet that I was talking about before. That's called the AFI Pedometer Plus 2 system. And that ankle bracelet collects information about the animal's activity. So it collects step activity, lying time, standing time, the number of times that she changes from lying to standing in a given period, and it's all collected in the memory of that particular pedometer. And then when she comes into the parlor, that information is read here. We also have a wireless system, So we can collect that information every 15 minutes wirelessly, and that was one of the new upgrades to this from this facility to this facility from our old facility. In our old facility, we could only collect the information here twice a day at milking, but now with the new wireless system, we can collect it every 15 minutes.
Okay, so she's basically being monitored 24 hours a day, and you really know her habits.
Yes, that's correct. And another, so that's one piece of technology that we have here. The other one is down here. We have standard milk meters to collect total pounds of milk that are given per cow per day. And then we have what we like to call the blue egg. That's the Affy Lab system, and it is a near infrared system that has a variety, it has a little catch point in the center that every couple of seconds during an entire milking, wavelengths are passed through the milk, and we collect information on lactose concentration, fat content of the milk, protein content of the milk. We also have the ability to look at whether or not there's blood in the milk, which is an indication of disease. And that information is collected throughout the milking every couple of seconds, and then an average is created at the end of milking. So if we go to look in the computer after milking, we can see an individual number assigned to that cow for fat percent, protein percent, and lactose percent at the end of the milking. Combined together, one of the focuses of the Virginia Tech Dairy research here at the facility is to use this information to help identify disease sooner. So our thought is that we can tell that an animal is potentially getting sick by changes in her lying behavior and in her milk components before we can visually see that she's sick. So we're trying to make sense of that data for them. These are commercially available, and there are dairies in Virginia that have these systems. We are, not a lot, it's gaining in popularity because they're relatively new, and we're trying to come up with how to handle the data.
So you're milking around 220 cows every day. That's a lot of milk. Where does all the milk go? What do you do with it?
All of our milk goes to the James River facility to be pasteurized and packaged, and a portion of it stays within the correctional system, and another portion of it comes back and is served right here on campus. So our students can purchase Virginia Tech milk produced at Virginia Tech here on campus. That's to kind of support that whole buy local, be local movement that's so big right now, and when we're thrilled to finally have our milk processed and brought back to here on campus.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're going to go check out the calves now.
Okay, great.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
So we've made it to the calf barn. From a technology standpoint, what happens here?
We have some of the same technology that we had in the milking parlor that we talked about. There's an automatic calf feeder that will feed them, and so the calf can go visit the calf feeder, and the feeder will collect information about their feeding behavior. So we can collect information regarding how many times they visit the feeder a day, how much they drink at each feeding, whether or not every visit is rewarded, their drinking speed, and all of that is really helpful for us to determine whether or not that calf is healthy. So she's going to start to deviate from some of her normal behaviors when she starts to not feel well, and that likely will be before we can visually see any signs of disease. So our goal is to be able to use that data and also be able to share that with our industry about how these different variables are impacted when an animal becomes sick, and we can use that to then detect disease and therefore improve animal well-being in these baby calves.
So a lot of this research that's going on here really does impact the dairy industry as a whole.
It does.
Because you share all of this information with the farmers through the extension service.
Yes. Yep, we're very extension driven. All the information, especially my research program, is a very applied research program. It's stuff that's directly applicable to the dairy industry. It's stuff that we're trying to get out to them to help them improve, immediately.
Good work going on here.
Yeah, we're really proud of it.
Well, I think we're going to talk to Dr. Bob James next,
Okay.
and I'm going to go see if we can find him.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, Christina.
Yeah.
So we're here in the calf barn, and I've called up with Dr. Bob James. And Bob, you are a full professor with dairy science, and you also work with extension?
Yep, I'm the project leader for our dairy extension program.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about this barn itself. What makes this barn special?
Okay, this is a great improvement over what we had before. We were in some facilities that were built back in the 50s. We had kind of adapted to it. I think one of the things you'll see is it's very bright and open. We've got wonderful ventilation. And I think really to improve the welfare of these animals, as you can see, these calves are pretty happy to be around us. Some of the other things that Dr. Peterson-Wolf had talked about was we have a computer feeder, lets us tailor make a feeding program for the calves that gradually brings them up, kind of plateaus them, and will gradually wean them. And it's providing a feeding program just like mom would do if she were feeding the calves. And we have some wonderful data on these calves. And this is technology really that dairy producers in Virginia have and can utilize as well.
Right. Now, it's very quiet in this building.
Yeah.
And that's done on purpose. How and why?
Well, it's quiet because the calves are very satisfied. They always have availability of food. And when we fed calves traditionally in a calf hutch or in an individual pen, and we fed them twice a day, they'd get very hungry in between feedings. And so when it came time to mix up the milk or to feed them, there would be a lot of vocalizations. And as you can see here, the calves are quiet. And, and they're really very positive about people too. And so there's some real big changes in animal behavior.
Absolutely. Well, they're all beautiful and they're healthy. Now, on one side of the barn, you have smaller calves that are
Right.
still drinking
Yep.
milk. And these girls right here
Yep.
have been weaned off of milk.
Right. These calves are about, anywhere between 8 and 12 weeks of age. And so they come from that side of the barn over to here. They stay here until they're really well on to eating hay and eating their grain. And then we move them over to another facility for more months until they're moved on outside to pasture.
Okay. Well, I think now's a good time for us to see that area and see some other areas. You're going to take
Okay.
us on a little tour?
Okay, very good.
All right, let's
Yep.
go. So, Bob, here we are in the barn. It's like a huge loafing shed. Let's talk first about the design of this barn.
Okay, very good. This is somewhat similar to what we had before, with some changes in that this is what's called a double slope barn, which enables us to do some environmental research where we look at emissions from the lots, and that's some work done by Dr. Mark Hannigan. So that was one of the design features here. The other one, as you can tell, is that the ventilation, I think, is a little bit better than we had on the other one. The other feature that we have is that these free stalls are now bedded with sand, and there's two advantages of that. In that before we had mattresses and sawdust, and which is expensive, and the sand is just a lot healthier for cows. In addition, we can now recycle that sand. We're reclaiming about 85% of that sand, and so we can reuse it again.
Is that being used a lot
Yep.
here in the States?
I think you'd call that the gold standard.
Okay.
And if a farm is building new and they can design their manure system correctly, this is the way to go, because it is more comfortable for the cow, so
Okay.
that really helps an awful lot. Our somatic cell count has dropped by about 150,000 since we've moved into this facility, which is just really great, which means higher quality milk, which means longer shelf life for a consumer. And we're just really, really excited about what it's done for the cows and for the quality of our milk.
Well, the barn itself is divided up in different sections.
Right.
And it also looks to me like you could probably divide it further if needed. And I'm sure that was all part of the plan.
Right. This side of the barn over here is what we call our research side, and that you'll notice we can divide it into smaller groups of 24 cows, which really conforms to what we have in the milking parlor, because we have a double 12, so we can milk 24. So that's how it's divided up. And as you can see, we've got some of those divisions right now. So we can do some research on cows in groups. It's not quite as statistically powerful, but it does give us that flexibility. This side are all in very large groups, and these would be cows that are not involved in very intensive research at the present time.
Now, do any of these cows go out to pasture?
Nope. Well, they stay in here until they're what we call they're dry. So in somewhere over 10 to 12 months at the end of that lactation, we'll dry them off. They'll go outside to pasture, and they'll stay out there until about 14 days before they're due to calve, and then they come into our prepartum facility. It's real interesting though, this barn is so comfortable that a lot of time cows would rather be in here than outside.
Well, one of the things you had mentioned that that you guys are doing some research on is feeding. And I think that's going to be our next stop. We're going to go look at the feed bins and how you're doing that.
Okay, that'd be fine.
All right.
Yep, let's go.
So Bob, we're in the portion of the barn where you have some feeding research going on.
Yep.
And what are you holding?
We've got a little bit of a total, we call it total mixed ration here. And because it has all the ingredients all mixed up, so the cow really doesn't have the opportunity to choose what she eats. This facility, we call it a Kentland door facility, so every cow is assigned to her own box. And we have to train her to use that box, and so we know what we have fed her in the morning. We come back again the next morning, and excuse me, there's one in the door right now. And so we come back again the next morning and we weigh what she hasn't eaten, and we know exactly how many pounds that cow has consumed. So we know her protein intake, her energy intake, her fiber, all the minerals, all the vitamins very, very precisely. We know a whole lot more about feeding cows than we know about feeding people, because we can assign them to diets where we really don't give them a choice to separate. And so this is a facility that lets us do some pretty sophisticated work right now, a lot of work being done on feed efficiency and relationship to genetics. And but we'll be doing a lot of work in the future. These doors are almost always in use. In other words, we always have trials going on in this facility because there's a backlog of research just waiting to be done.
So let's talk a little bit about the research.
Okay.
There's so many different areas of research going on just at the dairy complex.
That's right.
And so we're at the feed. Let's talk about feed. What is it that this research is telling you, and how is that benefiting today's farmers?
Okay. Ultimately, we look at the efficiency of the cow. And I've given you some information, but back in the 50s, we had about 24 million cows. And we now have somewhere between 8.5 and 9 million. Those 8.5 and 9 million cows produce 4 times more milk than we were producing back in the 50s. So we have far fewer cows, and what that means is that there's a whole lot more efficiency of our operation in food production, which is what we have to feed the growing world, which means lower feed cost, ultimately, lower food cost for the consumer.
Right. So let's do a little bit of myth busting.
Okay.
We've got far less cows
Yep.
on less land, but
Right.
we're getting more milk.
That's right.
You must be feeding these cows growth hormones or hormones to stimulate their milk production.
Well, it's kind of, we don't feed them any hormones at all. For one thing, if you fed them a hormone, it would be digested by the cow because they're proteins and they would be broken down. We don't feed antibiotics because the repercussions of that, we're not allowed to ship milk with antibiotics. So if you buy raw milk, organic milk, regular milk, it's all antibiotic free. And I think that's a big misconception that some of the consumers have, is that it's all antibiotic free and all really very safe. Looking at hormone levels, yes, they're higher and higher producing cows because that's what they're doing naturally.
Hormones help make the milk.
Sure, that's right, and that's what happens
But
naturally.
those hormones are in the cows naturally, and that
That's right.
comes from genetic selection and good breeding.
Well, and we've had very intensive genetic selection, and this is not what you'd call GMO. This is something we've been done for many, many, many years. And one of the things, it's not only metabolically, but they eat a lot more. Okay, they're very vigorous eating. These cows, probably historically, we'd be glad if they'd eat about 3% of their body weight in dry matter a day. And now cows are eating 4 or 5%. They have a tremendous drive to eat. We've done selections so that we now have dairy cows versus beef cows, and they're selected to do different things.
Well, I think we're going to move on outside next and talk about your nutrient management
Okay,
program.
sounds great.
All right.
That's good. Thanks.
So we're outside of the barn, and I see all these pits around us. This is your manure or nutrient management.
Yep.
Tell us how it works.
Well, we want to be good stewards of the environment. So I think one of the other parts of our mission, both from extension and from research, are to develop systems where we recover as much of the nitrogen and phosphorus that we produce on the farm. So our barn is flushed. The flush water goes over to what we call a sand lane. and it's at a very low slope, and so that sand will drop out, and we can reclaim about 85% of that sand. The rest of that effluent comes over to these cells over here, and we have 3 cells. Each one of them will hold about 30 days worth of manure, and it's very simple. In fact, on the sides of each one of those cells are just screens. So the manure comes in, and over a process of 30 days, a lot of the water escapes. We can pull that manure out then and spread it on a very timely basis when the crops need it. And the fluid from that goes into one of the 2 pits here. They're agitated the whole time, and so it kind of encourages the bacterial growth in there. We pull out of the top of one of those and into the next one, and we get some further settling out of the manure solids, and we use that cleaner water then comes over into a large tank here that we use for flushing the barns.
Now, you mentioned crops, you mentioned cover crops. The Dairy Science Complex is on Kentland Farms.
That's right.
First of all, give us a little bit of background about Kentland Farms and
Okay.
its size and what all goes on here.
Yeah, Kentland Farms was involved in a land swap quite a few years ago from some land, very high value commercial land, and there was a swap of about 250 acres for this 1,800 acre farm. And quite frankly, that was some very visionary movement by our university and our college administration. Dr. Jim Nichols was our dean at that time. And it has been a phenomenal resource for the whole college, because we see the horticulture operation has room for theirs, animal science, crop, soil, and environmental science, animal science. The university has, the dining halls have some land where they grow food for the dining facilities. So it's really a very, very wonderful facility that we have. And we've had some really excellent management of this facility. I think some awfully good cooperation, so it's been a wonderful resource.
So Bob, this dairy complex that we've looked at today is only phase 1. There's a phase 2 coming?
That's right. And phase 1 was really moving the production facility down here. The milking, not really all the research facility or all the teaching facilities. So phase 2 will be teaching. There will be a small facility located behind the Veterinary College of Medicine for some teaching work with dairy cattle and beef cattle. That'll be used by the vet school, by dairy science, animal science, ag tech. There'll be another facility located on the other side of Plantation Road, over not too far from the Alpha Stewart Pavilion, where there'll be facilities for holding animals temporarily for classes. There'll be classrooms, some teaching laboratories there. And then there'll be an intensive metabolic facility located down here just on the other side of the milking facility. That'll be used when we have to move animals in for very intensive study, where we need to collect all their manure, all their milk. We may be doing infusions on those cows. And that'll be shared by both animal science and dairy science, but it'll be under our control. And that enables us to really compete for some pretty high-end research grants. And that's something that we really don't have at the present time.
It sounds like part of the new facility is going to be more research and a little more hands-on.
Yep.
Because what you're gathering now is kind of monitoring the cows and what they do on a daily basis, but you can really get in and do more hands-on.
Right. Well, this facility, we need something more available to the students. We use students down here very heavily for labor. We hire about 14 students, and they're involved in milking and taking care of cattle. And but for teaching, it's a little cumbersome to bring all the students down here, except for some very small, intense classes. And so when we need to have larger classes with some animals, we'll ship animals up there and have them up on campus, so it's not going to inconvenience the students too much.
It's a beautiful facility. Kentland Farms itself is just gorgeous, and it's a wonderful addition.
Yep. I want to give some credit. We have a fellow by the name of Dwight Paulette, who is our farm manager down here, and he's just done an excellent job of facilitating really cooperation amongst all the different departments and really optimizing our use of Kentland Farm.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, thank you so much for having us out here today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much.
That does it for our show. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great week.
From apples to zucchini, Virginia farmers work hard to put food on your table. And Farm Bureau works year-round to help farmers and all Virginians. Farming, it's all good. To learn more, go to vafarmbureau.org.
Check out Virginia Farming on Facebook. Virginia Farming's Facebook page is a great way to stay connected with Virginia agriculture. You might even find some humor there too. You'll find links to events and happenings all over the Commonwealth that are of interest to farmers and consumers alike. So connect with us and share your stories and photos with the Virginia farming community and keep up to date on all things agriculture. Virginia Farming on Facebook.